Hey everyone, this is Mario again, coming at you with another movie review. As I said before, Monster Fest is quickly nearing its end. This is probably going to be the second to last video if I'm counting days right, because as I record this it's the 28th and I only have one other video. Yeah, there's going to be one more video after this if I'm counting right. Yeah, one more video. Hopefully if I can time it right it'll be the sequel video to this. Anyway, today it's a double review because I did not know if I'd be able to fit each of these into a separate video, so I decided, what the heck, I'll just do a double feature review. Now this is what I would like to call the Blob double feature, because today I'm going to be reviewing the 1958 classic The Blob starring Steve McQueen, as well as its 78 comedy sequel, which was shot by the actor who played JR in Dallas. Now, before I go into talking about The Blob, I'm going to let you guys know that I saw the films in reverse order. First I saw the remake, then I saw the comedy sequel, then I saw this film. Now, I saw this, like I just said, I saw this film last, and I saw it originally on AMC, or Turner Classic Movies, one of those channels, a couple years ago. When I first saw it, I guess I was a little turned off by it. I guess maybe it's because I had just seen the remake a couple weeks before, and I remember that the kind of comedic nature of the sequel, so I thought it would probably be a similar tone to the sequel. The first thing when I first watched it that turned me off was the song, Here Comes the Blob. It's basically just a weird song. Maybe it fits the 50s, but I don't know, and it just kind of turned me on and turned me off, I guess. And when watching the film, I thought it was okay. Now, watching it a second time, first of all, when that song came on, I pushed mute so it wouldn't, put me in a bad mood already. Then I watched the film, and I have to say, I like the film a little bit more now. Am I a big fan of the movie? No, I'm not the biggest fan of the 58 film, but I do respect it for what it is, because this film is basically what helped turn Steve McQueen into a star, from what I understand. Because from what I understand, before this he had just done like small roles, and this was his first starring role. And you can actually see in his acting, you can see the future star that he became in there. Granted, it's not an award-winning performance, but you can see it there. And the funny thing is, the only reason he took this role in the first place was that he needed the money. He got paid $3,000 for this role, and he needed the money for rent and food. Now, a funny thing about that is that another role he had been offered would have been like a smaller upfront fee, but 10% of the total gross. The reason I say that's funny is because I don't remember what that film was, but overall it grossed about $10 million. He could have gotten $10 million. Granted, his career might have taken a little bit more, but he would have had the money, so he could have lived for a while. Then again, if that had happened, maybe he wouldn't have continued acting. Maybe he would have invested money and gone through a different career path. So we don't know. So it's a good thing he chose this role in the long run for the looks of things. Now, the plot of the movie, it's basically the same plot as the remake, if you've seen the remake, only it actually takes place in the 50s, because with the remake, you can tell it takes place in the 80s, but they never say a specific... Actually, both of them take place in current day, I guess you would say, this one being the 50s. There's these teenagers, they're on dating, one of them is played by Steve McQueen, and the other one is played by, his girlfriend is played by Annetta Corsott. They see a falling star, they go to investigate, and it's the Blob. It's in an asteroid thing, which I'm going to say off the bat, one thing is that the Blob's origin is never explained in this movie, which I guess is kind of scarier, but I prefer, when I get to the remake you'll understand, I prefer that thing of it. And it's actually a star, like a meteoroid thing, that actually falls apart completely. And the Blob gets on the hand of an old guy, they take him to the hospital, and then slowly it starts eating people. I will say for 50s, the Blob effects actually are done pretty well. Obviously they're not as mind-blowing as, let's say, the remake is, but you don't expect it to be. It's 30 years before. So for 50s movies, the Blob effects are pretty good. It's silicone and stuff. Granted, like, when it takes over the diner, you can tell obviously it's a matte painting, but it still is creative. Now, the acting from the side actors, it's not what you would call award-winning by any means. Maybe probably because of the budget and the actors they had to get, because the budget for this movie was about not even $250,000 if I'm calculating right. Yeah, a little less than $250,000, so about 230 37,000 of it went to the other stuff other than Steve McQueen, because he got 3,000 of it. But the actors, they do decent jobs. Like this one actor who plays one of the cops. I'm gonna see if I can get the officer correct, because there's a couple cops. It's Sergeant Burt. He's cynical. He basically hates the... I don't know if hates would be the right word, but he doesn't like the teenagers. He doesn't like you. Sorry. I don't like you either. Always good to throw in a Star Wars reference. Just watch yourself. I'm the law. I'm the law! And we find out in the film that it's because his wife was killed in an accident with a teenage driver, and a couple of the teens drive. So you can see he's going to be biased against them no matter what. So what are you kids trying to tell me? You trying to tell me old man Jenkins is a child molester? Ah, get out of here. I don't believe you sons of bitches. Or he'd probably be like, so you're saying that the Phantom Thief is old man McGraw? Get the fuck out of here. The 11 Commandments? George Carlin reference. But you can tell that he's not going to take what they say at face value. But his superior, Lieutenant Dave, does. So you can imagine, though, with the hierarchy, when Lieutenant Dave believes him, you know, the sergeant's going to have to do what the lieutenant tells him. Unless, of course, the captain tells him, nope, 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 go with the sergeant. Now, and as you can guess, as the film goes on, no one believes the kids at first that the Blob is after them. But as the film goes on, people start to see. And then, of course, at the end, the town has to figure out how to get rid of the Blob. And everyone knows already what it is. Everyone knows the Blob's weakness. It's cold. But in this one, I don't know if it was specifically supposed to be CO2, but they mentioned CO2 a lot. And when they mention fire extinguishers, they say only the CO2 kinds, I guess, because they only had that in fire hoses or something back then. But the CO2 works, and it ends on a cliffhanger ending. And I don't know how many other horror movies of this time had these cliffhanger endings, but it's the type of ending, you know, that goes, "The end?" Question mark? Which might turn some people off, but I do like how it ends. You know, they basically defeat the Blob, but I guess in the universe of the film, this is one reason the Al Gore of that universe would be saying not to do global warming for. Why? Flashback to when he was a little kid. That's the Blob! I don't want that thing freed again. But of course, it didn't take global warming to free the Blob, as we find out in the sequel. Which, Beware the Blob, also known as Son of Blob and Son of the Blob. It's a comedy sequel. So, as you can guess, it's not really horror comedy, it's more comedy. It's not, like, when you think of horror comedy, you think of horror movies that have comedy in it, like some of the Nightmare on Elm Street films, like Part 6, and a couple of the Jason films, like Part 6 as well. Or you think of horror films that have comedy, like Hatchet 1 has horror and comedy, but that's just one of the reasons some people get turned off by it, I guess, because they didn't advertise it to have comedy. Or you get parody ones like the Scary Movie. This, it's a sequel to the Blob, but at times it feels like a parody to the Blob. I mean, because first of all, we see footage of the first film on the TV at one point, but they don't make it out that it's the film. If you've seen the first film, you'll understand what it is, of course. And it's not, doesn't outright state it's a parody, but they do. I guess it's the comedic nature that makes it feel that way, which is one reason I can't really recommend the sequel unless for curiosity's sake. And I liked it when I saw it as a kid, but now looking back at it, I will say it has some good notes, but is it a film that I would rewatch? Unless I'm showing it to someone, that's about it. Or maybe if like Mike wants to do a commentary or something, then I would watch it again, but not really. Now, the good notes of it, like the first film, the Blob effects, top notch. I mean, when it oozes up from the sink, for one thing, that's good. Granted, there are some parts where it looks bad, like where you can tell it's just a balloon. They all float. Yeah, I'd rather be watching that movie. And also times where it's just a red light and stuff. But for when it actually is a goo thing, they're done very well. Some of the actors are pretty good, like our main couple, they do pretty good, even though they're not award-winning, just like in the first film. One of the adult characters who was near the end, he is such a prick of a character, and I have to say, I did like the actor they got him. One cameo that I did not even recognize until I saw it, but I thought was pretty good, was Burgess Meredith. Mickey himself as a hobo. Yeah. Now imagine if his character Mickey was there. Yeah, the Blob's not gonna beat me. I'm gonna eat it and then crap it out. No goose gonna eat me. He'd be like, but he gets killed, of course, but it's off screen. He's a hobo. You always got thrown a hobo death in these movies. Now, plot-wise, the film takes place, I'm guessing, about 20 years after the first film. Somehow this one character, I guess, I don't remember exactly what they state his profession is. I guess he's like a surveyor or something. He found a piece of the Blob up in the north. That's the only way you could tell that it connects to the first film, was that the Blob was frozen in ice. Other than that, there's not really many connections. I guess you could say it's kind of like Predators. It's a very, very loose sequel with only one part that connects it. But other than that, it might as well just be a remake. The Blob escapes from this frozen thing all because of his wife setting the thing outside for allowing it to defrost. First it eats fly, then it eats their kitten. Which, that's probably the biggest thing about this is the original film and this film, they have stupid opening title screens, at least for me. I mean, the first one, like I said, here comes the Blob. In this one, we got credits of music and a kitten frolicking through a field. That's just a way to open your horror movie. Have a kitten frolicking through the daisies. That's a way to open a Disney movie, not a horror movie. And this was directed by Larry Hagman, the guy who played JR in Dallas. I mean, they even advertised it during a re-release as the film that JR shot. I say this is more like the film that JR got shot over. That's how bad I say this film is. But like I said, good notes. There are some good notes. Like the kill scene in the barbershop, for instance. I just like how it sets up. Well, first of all, that barber, I would never go to a barber like that, where he doesn't like being called a barber or hairstylist, but an artiste. And he's like, Michelangelo used marble as his canvas, I use hair. And then, of course, the Blob slowly oozing up through the sink, and then when he gets the guy down while washing his hair, he gets sucked in. And, of course, the effect of the Blob trying to take over the car. We don't see the outside, of course. But, no, I thought that was pretty good. And then, of course, when the Blob first eats the female, and then the effect of the Blob taking over that one guy, I thought was pretty good, but it's just the one female character's reaction when she sees that. That's part of her acting I didn't like. She looks like she's stoned at first, and then when she sees it, then she starts screaming. I mean, when she'd be like, "Hey, Bob, is that?" That's how you're supposed to react. You just, when you see something like that, you don't want to act like. It's almost like she was. It's like she was seeing the effect and was trying to laugh and was trying to keep in character, like that one guy who played the doctor in Ace Ventura. You could tell he laughed, but since he was looking away, he didn't really break character. You think he's just scoffing at it a little bit. Let's see, any other positive notes? I watched the movie last night. It doesn't seem like it. I have to really think hard. Oh, there's one part I will say that is kind of funny. It's where the Blob attacks this one guy who's in his bathtub and he sticks his dog after it doesn't work, so he has to run out of the house butt naked and a cop pulls him over. I will admit that is kind of funny. It's one thing I do remember about this film from when I was a kid. And how they defeat the Blob, not as good as in the original film or in the remake, but it's passable. You know, they freeze an ice rink to freeze it, but would that freeze the whole Blob? I don't know. And like all three films, it does have the cliffhanger sequel bait ending, but unlike the first one, and more so than the second one, this is definite because the original film basically is just the end question mark, the sequel bait. Then the remake, it's just that whole thing, the Lord may give me a sign. Which that one you could just take, maybe he'll unleash the Blob one day, maybe he'll die and someone will get rid of it. Here it's definite because the Blob slowly starts to melt and goes over the sheriff's foot, and then it looks up and says the end. He looks up, looks down, looks up, and then says the end, question mark. That's a little bit more definite, but I'm glad that they did not make a sequel to this because other than those good notes, watching it as an adult, the tone of the film, the comedic tone kills the film for me. I mean, if it had been done maybe more like a 70s horror style, maybe it would have been better. Or maybe like a tribute to the original film. Or they should have just done an outright parody of the original film. Make it outright. Or like do what they did with Gremlins 2, you know, make fun of the stuff. Like, what happens if you're doing stuff like that? It's like, what happens if you don't use CO2? Does it not work? Something like that. I would have loved to have seen that, but this, no. The actors are just there. Like, overall, it's not a film I'd recommend, unless you're a fan of the remake or the original and just want to see it for curiosity's sake. That's the only way I could recommend this film, curiosity's sake. It is on Froggy, in case you're wondering. That's how I watched it, and unlike some of the films I've gotten from there, as soon as I'm done with this, it's going right into the trash. Not like I have a DVD, but you know, the literal trash on my computer. Anyway, ratings. My rating for the original film, like I said, I respect it, but I'm not the hugest fan of it. I'd say 3 out of 5. My rating for this film, for what I enjoy of it, 1.5 out of 5 for Beware the Blob. Seriously, and that's kind of being generous. I mean, like I mentioned, it has a couple of good notes, but not enough to save the film. Anyway, we are approaching the end of Monsterverse.